Testing, testing. Is this thing on? Hello. Hello, hello. Hi, everyone. Yeah, like Noah said, my name's John Blau. I am very happy to be giving a talk back here tonight at ROC Game Dev. I don't know if I was like one of the OGs, but I was very close to being one of the OGs when ROC Game Dev was first starting. It was a big part of my sort of like college experience in games, and a big part of the sort of like community experience that I had that I feel like I've been able to take forward in a lot of ways. So I'm really happy to be invited back and get to talk about some stuff, especially get to talk about some stuff that, like, as someone who, you know, was graduating from RIT, getting into my junior and senior years, I wish someone was able to talk to me about. So that's what this is about, right? This is about junior goals. So this talk is all about things that I found helpful as a junior. I use the term junior here just because it's like one of the more common like terms, either junior or like beginner or associate is sometimes what you'll see in the games industry. I use the term junior here just because I think it fits nicely. My title was never a junior, so I went from being a game design fellow at Schell Games to being just a straight up game designer. We don't make those sort of distinctions about like who's junior, who's just like a straight up designer. But this is basically for folks who are junior in the industry. So that being like between 1 and 3-ish years of experience. I'm coming up on 3 years myself. This is about practices and goals for that junior developer. So this is not how to get the job. This is once you've gotten the job, once you've landed that first position, what are the things that you should be looking for? What are the practices that you should be engaging in? And what sort of goals should you set for yourself to say, by the end of my time as a junior, I should be able to do these things? Also, these are things, even if you are looking for a job right now, especially since I know a lot of ROC Game Dev folks are in college or are at places like RIT, U of R, these are things to be prioritizing in your first position. So these might be questions to ask in your interview about, we'll talk a little bit about mentorship, right? What the company culture around mentorship is, if you're going to get those sort of resources available to you. Those might be things that you want to take into a first position. So where are we starting from, right? We're starting from you've just gotten your first job in the industry. That first job in the industry might be your dream job, right? Like, congratulations, right? The question is, what comes after you've landed that, you know, quest designer position at Blizzard or the level design position at Naughty Dog, right? Like, what comes after you've gotten the role that you want to do? You might not be starting from that position, though. Your first job might be another role that you were sort of tangentially interested in, right? Not maybe the primary thing you were gunning for, but something else that you're also interested in. Oftentimes, this can mean, oh, I was gunning for a production role, but right now I'm in design, right? Or, oh, I'm gunning for a VFX role in particular, but that's a little too specialized, so right now I'm doing generalized 3D art, right? Concept artists find themselves in that position, like, it's a little specialized, people are looking for a little bit more expertise. Right now I'm going to be in a different position, a more generalist position. And you might also just not be in a job that you could be too picky about, right? Job is a job, experience is an experience, and we know how hard it is to find roles in the industry overall. And so to all of these people, right, these things are applicable. I want to talk a little bit about your career path. Not that I'm like super far down this or like I'm an expert in this, but especially those first couple of steps that you might be able to see for yourself once you get into the industry. For that, I'm going to go over to the whiteboard. You'll be able to see my face. I have had Noah set this up so lovingly for me. So we're going to do a quick transition over to that, and we'll talk. Hello. Hi. Whoa, that's close. Hello. Hi, everyone. It's me, John Blau. I've already had my intro, so I'll get to it. Think about your career path, right? Career paths, you can talk to better people than me about this, but they're non-linear, right? And really how that starts to feel when you are in a first position is you start talking to people and you've got all of these people around you who have taken different paths with their career, through the industry, maybe even gotten into the industry late, left it, come back again. So you start to get a sense of just how winding all of those different career paths can be. So if this is you, right? Hello. You're starting from this position here in, oh, can you see it all right? I think so. This is you. You've just gotten your job in the industry. This is where you sort of land, and you're on a project, right? That project, again, might be one you're super excited for, might not. But from there, you're going to have other opportunities, right? You're going to have maybe an opportunity to help out a little bit with some of the level design that's going on. Or maybe you get to hop on to some of the more production roles, get into meetings that have higher level people in them, higher level stakeholders. Maybe instead of doing those things, you say, I really would love to do this kind of a thing, but I'd like to do it in a different medium. So right now I'm doing this job for, I don't know, a switch port, but instead I want to be working towards or doing something in VR, right? Or doing something for Xbox, or doing something on a different platform, right? That might be another version of you, or another opportunity that you have to take. And then maybe another opportunity that you have to take is, hey, I would really like to be on the hardware side of things, right? I don't want to be on the software side of things. I want to be the people making the controller, right? Writing something maybe for Unity, creating dev tools that other people will get to use, because I find those to be so useful myself. So you'll have all of those different opportunities that will kind of present themselves to you in a smattering of ways throughout your first couple of months. And the question is like, well, which one should you go down, right? You might have an idea of this sort of like goal version of you that you want to get up to up here. But this goal version of you is going to shift, it's going to change, and it's a good guiding star for where you might want to be, right? You could potentially go up that path and just sort of like go straight down this path and say, oh, I want to do that. But more often than not, what you'll find, at least in my experience and in talking with others, is that on projects and things, you're going to want to take these other adjacent opportunities, or those things might reveal themselves as being more lucrative, or they might pay more, or might be something that you're actually more passionate about. So let's say that you choose this direction to go in, right? You say, oh, I want to work more on the hardware side of things. Well, now you're going to have more opportunities presented to you, right? You're going to have more like different things that you can go for. And essentially what's going to happen is you're going to hop around a lot, right? You could go, your path could end up looking like this to get somewhere entirely different. Your path could wind in this direction, right? And you can see all the different ways that these career paths sort of start to wind around in. I think my point in trying to demonstrate with the whiteboard here, or through all of this, is just to say that like, you will find yourself with different opportunities, and you should be grabbing those opportunities. And that you, a year, 2 years, 3 years in, want to, as a junior, be exposing yourself to as many of those opportunities so that you can take them as possible. That's what you should be looking for, is the ability to take these opportunities and drive yourself in a different direction if you feel like that's the thing you want to do. Okay, I think this is the last you're going to see of me, so I'll hop back. Okay. So, great. So my first strong piece of advice here is to examine the media that you consume. What do I mean by that? Really, you should be able to answer for yourself by the end of your time as a junior, what kind of media do I consume, and how do I consume that media? We'll talk about why this is important, but what kind of media do I consume, and how do I consume that media? I'm going to give some examples for myself, just so you can have an idea of what I mean when I say this. So what kind of media do I consume? Part of the media that I consume, and we're not just talking games, is media that lets me turn my brain off, but still allows me to feel productive. So for me personally, media that lets me turn my brain off, but still feel productive. Some examples of that might be like cooking YouTube, right? Like I'm in Rochester, so here's a Binging with Babish reference, right? But there's all sorts of videos online, the Bon Appetit stuff, right? Ethan's work, right? You can just have these videos on in the background, and I feel like I can turn my brain off and not pay much attention to them, but I feel like I'm learning so much, right? I feel like I'm getting so much done. I feel like I've just made a meal. I can smell it through the screen, right? That's part of why I like this media. Games akin to RuneScape, right? I'm not saying RuneScape specifically, but games where I like click once or make one very simple action and I get to see numbers go up really easily. And in addition, games it's like Guild Wars 2. You can just kind of run around in this game, and the game does a great job of pushing you through level design and through dynamic events that pop up into the same spaces as other players. So I can be as absent-minded as I want in Guild Wars 2, but I will always find myself back to something productive, right? Just to having something productive to do. So that's what type of media that I like to consume. And how do I consume this media? It's at the end of a long creative day, right? I am at the end of a long week or have just had a long creative day. I don't want to be thinking a whole lot about the media that I'm consuming. I just want to be consuming it, right? So that's how I engage with this kind of content. I'll give another example. So I also like media with this unresolved hope, bittersweetness, or like some might call it an ennui. Examples of that are like Totoro, where in Totoro, they say, oh, you know, there's this magical, fantastical world, right? If only you could look close enough to see it, or if only you, you know, could pay attention to the right things, then you'd be able to see what you're missing, right? There's this bittersweetness of aging and losing that ability to do so. This is an album with a Phoebe Bridgers cover by Christian Lee Hudson. It is great. There's a specific song on it called Rubberneckers that I think expresses this sort of bittersweetness well, where they say, oh, you know, if you tell a lie enough times, then it becomes the truth. And the lie that they tell throughout this song over and over and over again is that I'm going to be okay even though I've lost you. And they're telling themselves this lie long enough that they hope it's going to be true, right? That unresolved hope. I don't think for the gamer crowd, I don't think I need to give a reference to the moon, right? The super, super bittersweet, do what needs to be done. Brothers is another, Tale of Two Sons is another piece of media in this. And why do I want to feel this way? It's because sometimes it's difficult for me to really sit down, right? And how do I consume this media? Sometimes it's difficult for me to sit down and get myself to really like feel an emotion. And so this type of media that really sort of like brings it out of me is a moment when I can just sort of like melt into the couch, right? Or stare at the ceiling of my apartment. So those are some examples of the type of media that I like to consume. But I want to talk about why it's important that I've like identified these things. So this is spoilers for I Expect You to Die 2, which is a Schell game in VR. If you do not want spoilers for that game, please, you can mute me for about the next 2 minutes or so. But I worked on this game for a little bit of time at Schell. It's been released, gotten very, very good reviews, all that sort of thing. But one of the things that happens at the end of this game is you thwart the main villain's plan, but in doing so, you are presumed dead. And you die, and the other characters react in this very melancholic way to your death, right? There's this eulogy that's given by the other character who's closest to you, the handler, at the end of the game, about, oh, we hope that the agent is still alive, right? But we haven't recovered their body, or right? It's this really deep, heartfelt soliloquy, and I think rightly so. I really like this media, right? I like the bittersweetness of it. I like the unresolved hope and tension of, oh, maybe the agent could still be alive, right? But we've also gotten feedback from players that moment seems to be slightly at odds with some of the themes of the game, right? That it seems a little deep. It seems a little heavy. It seems a little dense of a moment. This was not a moment that I had the opportunity to sort of like give feedback on given my time on the project, But it was something that in hindsight, right, like I really liked about the title, but that maybe this decision was something that is contrary to the themes of the franchise or to the tone of the franchise, right? So for me, it's important to understand, oh, I might really like that thing. I might really like that unresolved hope or that unresolved tension, but it might not be the correct thing for the franchise or the game that I'm working on. Another example of this is sort of like Chicory. So again, I said I like to play games that allow me to turn my brain off and that are really sort of like I can feel productive doing. Chicory is a game that I played alongside my manager and another one of his managees, Mim. We do like a little monthly play a game, talk about it. And this is one of those games that I played for this. Chicory is a fantastic game. It's a really, really fantastic game, and it has a really strong vision of what it wants to go for. It basically says you are going to be a child, and you're going to be going around and filling out a coloring book. Here's what it looks like on the store page, right? It's you, and you're given this paintbrush with a bunch of different colors and a bunch of different like Photoshop brushes, and you're basically told, go around and paint the world. It's a little Zelda-esque as well. And this title, right, at the end of the day, when I was playing this, I just wanted to turn my brain off and be really rewarded for it. I was excited by some of the store page screenshots of this. Seeing this, I was like, like, I would love to make something that looks like that at the end of the day by just turning my brain off, right? If this game allows me to do that, that's awesome. But the reality of at least my playthrough of Chicory looked a little bit more like this. And so it didn't hit for me what I was looking for in the title, which was I want to turn my brain off and feel rewarded, right? I want to turn my brain off and feel like I'm getting something really cool done. Instead, what it kind of looked like is, oh, I did some finger painting haphazardly on the screen. And the game does a lot, right? To try to tell you that, like, oh, it doesn't matter what kind of art you're making as long as you're making art, right? The themes of the game, I think, are really well aligned to maybe not making what would be considered the highest art possible, right? Like, that's some of my stuff on the right. So the game, like, addresses this, but it wasn't really what I was looking for. And I want to talk about that a little bit more, because my response to this game was, you know, for me, it's kind of mid. In a similar way, by the same developer, they made a game called Wandersong. You have this ring of basically different notes that you can hit. So one color corresponds to one note, and each of those notes goes, right, like C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C. So up the piano scale, and you can press any of those notes that you want. My critique of this game is actually the same critique of Chicory when it comes to what I'm looking for, which is you're allowing me to have infinite freedom, but every time I hit a note, it sounds weird because it's not the note I should be hitting, right? It's like a B or B to a D, right? Which is, I don't know, can be strange sometimes. Sometimes you hit like an F sharp. It doesn't sound right. But that critique, which I feel really strongly about, nobody else seems to really like care. And that's okay. Like, the people who this game is for, or the people who like this game the most, really like this game for the thing that it's doing. And that game might not be for me, or that might not be the right feedback for this game. I would have preferred them to do something like what The Last of Us does, which is give me, at any given time, all the chords that are going to sound nice together, right? So all of these C, E minor, D minor, A minor, it gives you all those chords, and all those will sound really nice together. I would have done probably something closer to this if I was on the design team for Wandersong. But I wasn't, and people like it about the same, right? For different reasons, but, you know, people like it about the same. So for me and Chicory, right, I thought it was mid. People absolutely love this game, and rightly so. So why is all of this important? Why do I go through all that, right? Why do we care about the media that we're engaging with, and why do we care to examine that? Number one, at your place of work, you'll be able to self-advocate for the different opportunities you want that are in line with the types of media that you like to consume. So that could be one avenue you take, right? That's an opportunity I want. I want to work on something with ENNUI, right? I wouldn't recommend going to your manager and saying, I want to work on something with ENNUI, right? But those are the sorts of things that conversations you can build up to. It also allows you to identify any bias in your feedback before you're giving it to other developers. You as a developer are like the ultimate playtester, and your feedback is going to be weighed much, much, much more heavily than any other, even a playtester's, right, feedback, because you're in it all the time. You're constantly there. You can constantly give that feedback. So it also, by expressing what you like and knowing what you like, it helps others to better frame the severity of your feedback, right? My Chicory feedback, not very severe. I feel strongly about it, but it's not very severe. This on the right is a game that I had recently playtested for a friend, Z. I had given him the feedback that, hey, the transitions of this game are a little bit slow for me, especially for a mobile game. But I personally also gave him the feedback that I like really, really, really fast-paced mobile games. So he was able to weigh my feedback that, hey, these transitions are too slow against the type of experience that he was wanting to create for others. So examine the types of media that you really like. Point number 2, get mentorship. This one you're going to hear in basically any, no, don't give me that look. I made some memes. I'm trying to keep the kids interested. I'm old now. This one you're going to hear in absolutely any, basically like, what should you be doing as a junior talk, anything like that. I'm going to talk a little about how and why. So just right off the bat, in your role at your job, you may or may not have a direct manager. Managers make good mentors because they find other people that you work with or have worked with and are able to talk to them about it, right? There's also a consistency of communication that happens with managers and a relationship that your workplace sort of enforces that you create with a manager. A manager makes a great mentor, but they don't need to be the only type of mentor that you have, right? It just kind of needs to be someone that you vibe with, but also someone who is going to seek out difficult conversations with other people that you work with, because they're the ones who need to be able to give you feedback about what you're doing, how it's affecting the team, and do so in a way that's going to help you to grow. Ideally, again, your place of work has a structure for this. One of the reasons I really like Schell is because from day one, right, I was set up with a manager, but in addition to that, I had a whole network of other game designers I was able to reach out to about a various number of things. And so the culture of mentorship at Schell was something that I really strongly valued. If I were to give advice to someone who is looking for a job, I would say definitely seek out a place that is going to give you this type of mentorship or allow you these sorts of opportunities. If you have the option between two choices where only one gives you the mentorship opportunity. Again, in your career path, the important stuff right now is opportunities and finding them, and a mentor will help you find those things. And once you have a mentor, just like tell them like what you want to do. Again, maybe not the ENNUI thing, but like something that is a strong goal of yours. For me, it was when I walked in on day one at Schell, I said, hey, I want to give a GDC talk. And I thought that was a total pie in the sky description of something that I wanted to do. Maybe I'd get to it, maybe I wouldn't. But I did get to do it, and I'll talk about how in just a minute. But just tell your mentors what you want to do. They will find opportunities for you. They will go out talking with other people. They will hear about things since they're probably higher up at the company than you, right? And be able to put you into contact with other people. That's my next point, right? They'll refer you to other people who will be good to talk to, not just at the company, but overall. They're also advocating for your advancement down those paths that you've identified as being important to you, right? So I had said, right, hey, I really want to give a talk at GDC. We had made some like interstitial goals around that, right, of giving a talk internally to some design folks just to sort of practice the process of making it, of rehearsing the talk, of then putting a slide deck together, all of those sorts of things. My mentor, my manager, Francisco, and I, we made those intermittent goals, and he approached me one day and said, hey, I just noticed that the call for GDC talk submissions for 2022 has been put out. This is a goal of yours. Do you think you would have something to present? We were able to sit down, talk about maybe what it is that I would have to offer. It turns out it has to do with VR hand tracking, which is far too big of a topic to get into right now. But Francisco set me up with Kat, who's one of our social media PR people at the company, who already had a template together, right, for how to pitch to GDC, had a direct line to GDC to be able to do that pitch, was able to make that pitch on behalf of the company and me, helped me write the pitch, right? Like, all of these different resources were then available to me because my mentor knew that that was a goal of mine. And lo and behold, like, I got to do it. I got to give the talk. That was like one of the coolest things I think that I've done as a junior and been able to do. I was so happy to check it off my bucket list. So people need to know what you want to do, and you need to find people, especially mentors, who will advocate for you to be able to do those things. Here's one more thing. Keep track of everybody else's admirable traits. I have a literal list, like an Excel sheet, that I started in month 1 of me being at Schell, of everybody else's like things that they did that were cool, or that I thought were notable, or a leadership style thing that I liked, right? I said, oh, like Chance is really good at making dev tools, or understanding what options an engineer should put in when creating a dev tool, right? Something that's more associated with like a technical design sort of position. I didn't know the terminology for that at the time, right? But I knew, hey, Chance is really good at identifying what variables should be exposed for designers when they're doing their work. And so I just noted that down. I said, hey, Chase is really good at level design, right? He's also really good at bringing up the vibe in a room when it's down. And so I just noted those sorts of things. Keeping track of everybody else's admirable traits is, like, to me, one of the coolest things you can do as a junior, because you get to be in so many different types of meetings, meet so many new people. You can pretty quickly identify what folks are good at, and it helps you build your own path by giving examples to you of like, hey, here are things that other people do really well. It also helps other people build their paths, right? And allows you to give precise feedback like, hey, Chance, you're really good at this like technical design thing, right? Is that something that you'd be interested in pursuing, right? Maybe Chance didn't even know that he was good at that. Maybe he doesn't consider himself to be good at that, but hearing that feedback from others is valuable. Here is a note of mine. So Chance, actually, I reached out to him for this talk to see if he would give me a story about why like keeping track of others' admirable traits is useful. We had a colleague early on at Schell named Amelia, who was a UX artist. And Chance said, hey, I found that Amelia was really good at doing this very specific type of UI stuff. And Amelia similarly had said, hey, I understand that Chance is really good at playtesting, especially tutorials early on. And so the two of them sort of like came together. Chance asked Amelia like, hey, would you like to get better at this playtesting stuff? Amelia said, yeah, this is something that I'd really like to get better at. And Chance said, hey, I'd like to get better at the UX related stuff. So they were then able to work together to get better at their respective things together. And what's cool about that, right, is like you're not just investing in yourself by keeping track of other people's admirable traits, you're investing in others. Which is sort of my next point. I don't have any bullet points for this one, just trust me on it. investing in your peers. You're growing with your peers. Those people are going to move, change companies, right? Some are going to go to Riot. Some are going to go to another XR studio. Some are going to go to Apple. Some are going to go to all these places, right? And those are the people who, when they dip, right, will then find you new opportunities, or that you can reach out and ask for different opportunities yourself. Rising tide, right, like all that, raises all ships. But you get to make friends and you get to have all sorts of new opportunities. It's not the older, very experienced people in the industry really who you should be targeting, in my opinion, in your junior years. Yes, for mentorship, but not for sort of investing in their growth. Invest in you and your peers' growth instead. And this is the last one that I've got. Some people may be rolling their eyes at it, but I do truly mean it. You need to go home on time. Your time at the company is going to end, whether that is ceremoniously or with a sudden layoff. So the life outside of your work should be your absolute first priority. There is no excuse in the year 2022 to find yourself in a position where you feel like you need to be exploited for your work. So why? Here are some concrete dev reasons on top of the oh, you shouldn't for moral reasons and also because of your personal life. Number one, if you are not going home on time, you're compounding work for yourself, right? You're creating more work for yourself. People then say, oh, this person can take on X workload. You have to now meet and match that workload for the whole rest of the project. Number two, your work, especially for me as a designer, your work generates tasks for other people on the team that then they will need to stay after and work longer for in order to keep up with your pace, right? So you're not just generating tasks for yourself, you're also generating tasks for other people if you're working late. Another thing is it then gives studio management who maybe doesn't know that you're staying late, or when you go 3 or 4 rungs up the chain, will they know that you stayed an extra hour and a half here, an hour and a half there, right? No, they're not going to. So it starts to give studio management and production unrealistic expectations. That's not because necessarily they want to work you harder, but it's because they don't have visibility or they don't understand the trade-offs that you are making the personal decision to sort of make. And so that means oh, we made the first game in this amount of art scope and budget, right? If you have an artist who's crunching and doing extra work that entire time, all of a sudden that 8-month budget is actually a 10, 11, 12-month budget that just got compressed into an 8-month period, right? So then studio will make all their plans around, great, we have an 8-month budget, right? These things aren't, and then all of a sudden the next artist after you will then need to pick up that slack or be crunched or not have enough resources available to them. So it's this compounding issue that doesn't necessarily start with bad intent, but ends up hurting people all across the line. Also, just I don't know, touch some grass, right? Go outside, meet people in your local community, go to the ROC Game Dev meetup, right? Give a talk like I'm doing. You think I did this on work time? Heck no, I did not. I probably could have if I asked Kat and Francisco for a little bit of time for it though. Even so, so many benefits, right? I don't need to extol about it. So at the end of your time as a junior, in my opinion, just some of the things that you should be able to do. Number one, you got to be able to express what you like about media and identify when your feedback is prone to bias. Number two, you want to have a mentor or multiple mentors within the company who will be able to vouch for you. Mentors outside of the company, by the way, totally cool as well. And number three, right, identify traits in people that you admire. This way, if you're ever asked to lead on a feature or asked, what sort of preference you would have for staffing on an upcoming project, you're able to put together a team of people that you trust with the right skill sets and that you know how to work best with. Some other resources that I have just before the end of the talk. This is another talk on basically the same subject by Hannah, who worked at, oh gosh, what was it? Telltale before it closed, and she was unceremoniously fired from it. This is a talk by her about her experience as a junior at Telltale. There were definitely, by listening to this talk, there was less structure in place than what I have at Schell. So especially if you find yourself in a position where you're like, oh, I have sort of a little bit of structure, but not a lot, especially for mentorship at my company, I think her talk is really worth a go. Yeah, I think it's another great resource. And that's all I got. That's all I got. That's my talk on junior stuff. Feel free to leave any questions that you have in the chat. You can also ping me on Discord, since I'm still, I think, in the ROC Game Dev server. So if you just at me with any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. But otherwise, I hope you found it helpful. I hope you found it colorful. Yeah, thanks so much.
You doing Q&A?
Yeah, I'll do Q&A for a little bit. I don't know how that goes, though.
Yep, thank you, John. So if you have any questions, go ahead and drop them in the chat. We'll hang out for a few minutes, maybe try to fill some time. I will say this was getting claps in the chat. I'll say this is an awesome talk. I think it's it's something that I think I am kind of envious of you having the experience with, given that we've kind of had completely different career paths.
That's right.
I do not have a management and mentorship network necessarily built into my job.
You've started building one, though. I know you and I have talked about this. If you want to just turn this into a podcast for a minute, like I know you and I have talked about it a little bit, and you've tried to expand your network outside of just the immediate folks at Esthetician.
Yeah, absolutely. But again, just having the opportunity to have somebody above you that's kind of helping guide once you get out of school, especially, and you don't have once you get out of school and you don't have you don't have like professors doing that necessarily for you. I just think that it is really great to have that opportunity, but also to recognize it and to kind of take hold of it like you have. I think that that's super important to actually kind of leverage that opportunity while you have it, and acknowledge that, not every company provides us great mentorship, as you might have at Schell, but again, just know what to look for when you're even looking for a job, to look for those mentorship opportunities. That's the dreaded, do you have any questions for us in an interview?
Yes. Oh gosh. Oh gosh. Yeah. Especially when you're like just interviewing for like a fellowship or an intern role, right? Like those, it can feel so heavy to need to ask some of those questions, but they're good ones to ask, especially around mentorship.
Yeah, like I could tell myself at a career fair 5 years ago, oh, you should have said, oh, what kind of mentorship opportunities do you have for juniors or interns? That's just something I wouldn't have thought to, and I hope that people can take that away moving forward. Yeah, I mean, I personally, I usually try to come up with some questions. I don't specifically have anything, but here we go. Sam's got one.
You want to read it out loud, bud?
Yeah, I can do it. So, are these principles that you think are equally valuable for folks who are applying to be juniors but haven't been hired yet? How can they be applicable if you're a student when you hear this and you're working you're working in a tangential or different industry?
This is a great question. So, of course, right, like looking for mentorship opportunities in the roles that you're applying for in the games industry is one way that this is useful. Another way is looking to find mentors in the industry already, right, that you can talk to. Certainly the folks here at ROC Game Dev, right, have a bunch of people with experience in industry who you could reach out to. Like more often than not, people are willing to talk, at least for 30 minutes, right? Doubly so if you buy them coffee or whatever. I also think though that for people who are still applying to positions or who are still in school or maybe are in a different industry, the examining what media that you like is important too. And the reason for that is when I think sometimes when hires happen outside of the industry or not right out of college, you need to have like a pretty good story about yourself and why you're applying to that games company in particular. I know a lot of places ask, like, you know, why apply here, right? Like, why are you excited about the stuff that we work on? And so for you to be able to answer those other questions that I posed before of like what type of media you consume and how you consume it and how that relates to the company that you're applying to, I think that's one potentially great way to answer that question of like, why do you want to work here? It also could be a way for you to frame sort of like the story of your portfolio. You know, a lot of times people have portfolios or resumes that start to feel scattered because, oh, I worked on this one thing once and I worked on this other thing once. But if you're applying to certain positions, especially if it's a more specialized position like a technical designer position or, again, like a VFX artist, you'll want that portfolio and you'll want that resume to be specialized towards not just that position, but also the role you're applying for within the company. And so understanding what type of media that company makes, right, can potentially, or what type of media like you are really excited about or what gets you going, can be another way to frame that story, can be another way to reduce just the number of pieces of clutter in your resume that somebody might just get confused by. I hope that answers your question sufficiently.
Sweet. Well, it seems like we might not have any more questions, so we can go ahead and wrap it up here, unless one rolls in while I continue to do this long and drawn-out monologue. If you have any more questions for John, like he said, you can contact him on Discord. He is in our Discord. I believe. Oh, geez, what's your?
I think I'm John.Blau because I was back in the day when you had initially put it together, and that's great to hear, Patrick. Who says I'm trying to find some, but they were all answered. I think I'm John.Blau. I think. If not, I will change my name right after this to be that. Because I think at one point you had enforced like we have our real names. I don't know if that's still a thing that's going on, but
maybe it might have been really early days. Yeah, if you are just straight up John Blau, you have your name set appropriately.
Great. Yeah, find me like that.
Yeah, so you can find him on there. Yeah, if any questions ever come up, feel free to reach out there. And definitely, if you are seeking a mentor, that is a great place to get started. If your job does not offer you mentorship opportunities or you don't have a job yet. Yeah, so thank you again, John, for this great talk. And thank you, everybody, for joining us. I hope you all have a great rest of your evening.
Yeah. Yeah, Pogs in the chat. Thanks so much for having me.